You don't struggle to say no. You struggle with what happens after you do. Because the moment you think about setting a boundary, something else appears. A thought, a feeling. What if they get upset? What if this changes things? What if I lose them? What if they think I'm selfish? What if I'm seen as difficult or uncooperative? And suddenly, saying no doesn't feel like a simple decision. It feels like a risk. A profound risk to your relationships and your sense of belonging. Struggling with boundaries is not about communication. It's about fear of losing connection. It's about the deep-seated anxiety that asserting your needs will lead to isolation or disapproval. You see it in small moments, almost imperceptible to others, but deeply felt by you. You agree when you don't want to, like saying yes to an extra project at work when your plate is already full, even though it means sacrificing your personal time, or attending a social event you're not excited about, just to avoid disappointing a friend, even if you'd rather be home recharging. You might even find yourself lending money you can't truly afford to lose, or taking on emotional labor for others when you're already drained. You say yes, even when you feel resistance. Perhaps you nod along to a plan you secretly dread, or you offer help you don't have the capacity to give, feeling a knot in your stomach as the words leave your mouth. You might agree to a last-minute request, despite having other commitments, because the thought of declining feels worse than the inconvenience. You explain yourself more than necessary. Instead of a simple no, you find yourself crafting elaborate excuses, detailing your schedule, justifying your feelings, or even fabricating reasons to avoid a direct refusal. This over-explanation is an attempt to soften the blow, to manage their potential reaction. You soften your words. You might say, "I guess I can't really make it," or "I'm not sure if I can," instead of a firm, "I can't." You dilute your message, hoping it will be received more gently. You adjust your tone, making your voice sound apologetic or hesitant, even when you have every right to decline. You might even smile or laugh nervously, trying to convey that you're still agreeable, still likable, despite your refusal. Not because you don't know what you want, but because you're trying to manage how the other person will react. You're trying to control their emotions, their perception of you, and ultimately, the stability of the connection. And over time, this becomes a pattern, a deeply ingrained habit that shapes your interactions. You become someone who is easy to accommodate, easy to rely on, easy to ask. For example, you're always the one to pick up the slack, to lend money, or to be available at a moment's notice. You're the go-to person for favors, the one who never says no, the one who always puts others' needs first, but difficult to fully understand, because your real limits are rarely expressed. Your true desires, your genuine capacity, and your authentic self remain hidden beneath layers of accommodation. But here's what's happening underneath. Boundaries are not just about saying no. They are about tolerating the reaction that follows. The discomfort, the potential disappointment, the momentary friction. And that's where it becomes difficult. Because for many people, boundaries feel like conflict, rejection, disconnection. Not logically. You know, intellectually, that healthy relationships have boundaries. But emotionally, somewhere along the way, your mind learned, if I upset someone, I risk losing them. If I say no, I might be seen differently. If I create distance, the connection might weaken. If I prioritize my needs, I'll be seen as selfish. If I don't meet their expectations, they won't value me. If I stand my ground, I might be abandoned. So instead of setting boundaries, you maintain harmony. You choose the path of least resistance, the immediate comfort of avoiding confrontation, even if that harmony costs you something. It costs you your peace, your energy, your authenticity, and sometimes even your self-respect. Brené Brown once said, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves." But courage is required, because boundaries feel like risk. a risk to the very connections you cherish. Before we continue, a quick pause. If this reflection resonates with you, there are more videos like this in the Relationships and Identity playlist. Each one explores patterns in how we connect, respond, and interpret relationships. And if you want more perspective like this, subscribe to Daily Reset Lab. There is another layer to this. When you avoid boundaries, you avoid clarity. Because boundaries reveal something important: how the other person responds when you are not accommodating. Do they respect your limits? Do they understand your needs? Or do they push back, revealing a dynamic you've been unconsciously maintaining? But if you are always adjusting, always saying yes, always making things easier, you never fully see that response. You never get to test the true strength and nature of your relationships. You operate on assumptions about how others might react, rather than knowing how they do react. You maintain the relationship, but you also shape it into something that depends on your flexibility. A relationship where your role is primarily to accommodate, to be the flexible one, the easy one. And over time, that creates imbalance. Not because the other person is intentionally taking more. Often, they're simply responding to the dynamic you've established. They've learned that you're always available, always agreeable. But because the relationship has been structured that way, through repetition, each time you say yes when you mean no, each time you over-explain, each time you soften your words, you reinforce this structure. Avoiding boundaries also creates internal tension, because there are two experiences happening at the same time. Externally, you are maintaining connection. You appear agreeable, cooperative, and easygoing. Internally, you are ignoring your own limits. You feel resentment, exhaustion, and a growing sense of being misunderstood or taken for granted. And that gap grows, quietly, like a slow leak. It erodes your energy and your sense of self, until eventually, the relationship starts to feel heavy. It becomes a burden, rather than a source of joy and connection. Not because of what the other person is doing. While their actions might contribute, the primary weight comes from what you are not expressing. The unsaid, the unacknowledged, the unhonored parts of yourself. The shift is not to become more assertive overnight. That can feel overwhelming and inauthentic. And it's not to force yourself into uncomfortable behavior that feels aggressive or unnatural. The shift is to understand this. You are not just avoiding saying no. You are avoiding the possibility of disconnection. You are protecting yourself from the imagined pain of losing someone or being seen negatively. And once you see that, your behavior starts to make sense. It's a protective mechanism, born out of a desire to preserve important relationships. A small shift you can try is this. The next time you feel resistance, pause. Not to react immediately, not to blurt out a no or an yes you don't mean, but to notice what you are feeling. Is it a genuine discomfort from the act of saying no itself? Or is it a deeper fear of what will happen after? For instance, when a friend asks for a favor you're too tired to do, is the discomfort from the act of declining, or the imagined scenario where they might be angry, withdraw, or think less of you? When a colleague asks you to take on an extra task, is the resistance about the task itself, or the fear of being labeled as unhelpful if you say no? That distinction matters, because one is about the action, the simple act of setting a limit. The other is about the consequence you are imagining, the narrative you've created in your mind about what will happen, which may or may not be true. And once you see that clearly, you create space. Space to respond differently. Not perfectly, not without any discomfort, but with more intention and self-awareness, but more honestly. Honestly with yourself about your limits, and honestly with others about your capacity. Setting boundaries doesn't remove discomfort. It changes where the discomfort exists. Without boundaries, you carry the discomfort internally. It festers as resentment, exhaustion, and a feeling of being unseen. with boundaries. The discomfort becomes visible. It might manifest as a momentary awkwardness, a brief disappointment from the other person, or a need for a difficult conversation, shared, real. And that visibility creates clarity about the relationship, about what it can truly withstand and what it truly means, about the dynamic, whether it's balanced, respectful, and reciprocal, about what is actually being maintained. Is it a genuine connection or just a fragile harmony built on your self-sacrifice? If this made you reflect on your own relationships, you'll find more videos like this in the Relationships and Identity playlist. And if you want more perspective like this, subscribe to Daily Reset Lab, because sometimes the reason you can't say no is not because you don't know how. It's because you're trying to protect something you're afraid to lose.